everybody, and welcome to preseason edition of the Kelly Green Hour as we are a mere 49 and a half hours until the Eagles' first preseason game this Thursday against the Cincinnati Bengals at Lincoln Financial Field. And we are about 738-ish hours or 30 days away from the season opener on September 4th against the Dallas Cowboys. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, football games are actually going to be played this week. Let's go. I cannot wait. How you doing, bud?
I agree. I can't wait. Like training camp has been super nice to have back. It's nice that there was an actual football game played, no matter how it was. Like it's cool to see, the new technology being used by the NFL, and that they're getting ready to move away from that archaic chain gang that probably could have happened years ago with with the NFL and their technology and money. But it's just good to have football back and to be talking about football and to have you know to see the chaos reign supreme in the NFC East, except for Philadelphia. Because it's always good to see Micah Parsons angry, Terry McLaurin angry, seeing the stars of other teams upset because they're not getting what they want. And in at least the Cowboys situation, not saying any of the right things ever is just amazing.
So I do want to actually expand on that, but before we jump into that, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. And if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts on training camp so far, the battles, which battle you're most interested in, and the preseason game this week. The Bengals are we'll touch base on it, but the Bengals are going to play some starters. We could potentially see Chase and Higgins going up against Dory Jackson and Keely Ringo. So that should be some good competition, some good tape to get out there to figure out who CB2 is going to be. But Connor, you just mentioned the uncertainty in the NFC East through the other teams. The Giants are the Giants. They're going to suck. That's who they are. Terry McLaurin requesting a trade. I think he's going to eventually get paid. The fact that that Washington is giving all this money to 33-plus-year-old guys and then not going to prioritize somebody who has been there for his entire career and has gone through the slog and crap of quarterbacks, and now that he finally gets one, and obviously he deserves to be paid with the now I'm not going to be up there with the top tier receivers, but be in the maybe potentially the top 10, and then they're going to kind of poo-poo it. Well, that's Washington doing, Daniel Snyder things. When it comes to the Micah Parsons and Dallas thing, while I find it funny, I honestly think it's a show. What does Jerry Jones like more than anything? Money and eyes. He doesn't care if his team wins a Super Bowl anymore. He doesn't give a crap about going to the NFC Championship game or winning in the playoffs. He wants to be the center of attention. It wouldn't shock me, and it may never come out, but it wouldn't shock me if Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons put this plan together. He's going to put this. It was 3 note pages, so it was a lot to type, and who knows if he typed it himself or put it together himself. But it wouldn't shock me if they got together. They said, "Do this. Say you want to trade, and then by the regular season, you're going to get this new. You're going to become the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. You'll get a new 4 or 5 year deal, $150 million guaranteed, whatever it's going to be." All he cares about is being the center of attention. There's no way they get rid of Micah Parsons. So that's what I personally think. I think it's funny, obviously, when it first came out, but I took a step back and I was like, it's all a show. It's all it is, because that's all Jerry Jones wants. He doesn't care about winning. Like I said, he doesn't give a crap about any of that. All he wants to do is have all the eyes on him. He's the center of the football world because Micah Parsons, one of the better players in the league, requested a trade. But let's be honest, he's not going anywhere. By the regular season, by that first game, September 4th, he's going to have a big new shiny contract, and they're going to be laughing behind closed doors that they, this ploy that they put together, came to fruition. That's what I think. I don't know what you think, but they're my thoughts on that.
I mean, I can see it. I can believe that it's all a show and that's all that Jerry Jones cares about, because no matter what, his team could go, 16-1 or go 1-16, and they're still going to make a boatload of money. They're still going to be one of the highest valued franchises in professional sports. So for him, it's just what's fun for him, what's amusing for him. So I mean, I can totally see it. I mean, the only thing is, at the end of the day, they are fumbling the situation massively because the price tag just keeps going up. That's undeniable. That price tag's continuing to rise with every day that somebody else gets paid. Even some guy who's some mediocre edge who gets $10 million. Like, you look at like, even the Von Miller contract and some of these other contracts, and he's like, look at what he just got paid. Exponentially better than some of these guys who are even just getting 1 year contracts and stuff. So it's just every edge contract that gets paid out is just making it worse for Jerry, which is more amusing for us. If he wants to put on a show and then continue to have to pay out these meteoric contracts, by all means, go for it, Jerry Jones. I'm more than happy to watch that show go on with the Dallas Cowboys, because as soon as they drop this money on Micah Parsons, they are going to be cap strapped for. And they
They're
already
already
are the
capped.
way it is, and then you just drop this massive contract on Micah Parsons. The matters are just going to get worse. But we
Yeah,
got a
they did
little
it with
away
Dak.
from your regular intro, but
They did it with Dak. They did it with CD. They're now doing it with Micah Parsons. So as you know, as Eagles fans, we like to see all the dysfunctionality of the Dallas Cowboys. All right, some things happening around training camp for the Philadelphia Eagles. They made a trade yesterday. They traded Thomas Booker, the fourth defensive tackle, to the Las Vegas Raiders for Jacorian Bennett, a cornerback who, what draft was it? 2022?
2022, I think.
2021?
Yeah, he's played
22
2 years in
was
the
drafted
NFL.
one pick before Keely Ringo, one of the guys that he's going to be battling for CB2. Now, Bennett started. I mean, he got hurt, I think, late last year, but he was starting games for the Las Vegas Raiders, but that was under Antonio Pierce. And this new regime in Las Vegas with Pete Carroll, he just didn't fit that scheme, so he became available. I don't think Vic Fangio felt comfortable with Adoree Jackson, with Keely Ringo. And look, Vic Fangio says what's on his mind. He doesn't have a filter. He's going to tell it how it is. We all know Quinyon Mitchell's CB1. Cooper DeJean's going to be either a safety, he'll be a nickel. We don't know if they want to try him on the outside yet. We'll see. But we need to find that CB2 when they're in the dime look. And Keely Ringo or Adoree Jackson just haven't been able to pull away. So you bring in more bodies, you bring in more competition. We still have Mac McWilliams, we still have Eli Ricks. They still have again more guys out there to potentially try to win that CB2 position. But they got Bennett. Bennett took the red eye, got into Philly, and he was at practice today, passed his physical, and he won't play on Thursday, but he should get a lot of reps, over the next couple of weeks going into the final 2 preseason games. What were your thoughts when you saw that trade of Bennett for Booker?
Well, I mean, I kind of mentioned it on the Kelly Green Hour Twitter page, a little bit of my reaction with that regard. Like, I don't think that Thomas Booker was going to be able to take his career where he wanted it to go in Philadelphia. I don't think he was going to be able to take the next step up in Philadelphia. This is a guy who last season played, I think it was 16% of snaps, and now they expect Jordan Davis to play more snaps. They're expecting Jomo to step into a bigger role. They drafted Ty Robinson. They clearly love Ty Robinson. I think, and judging by some of the reactions of some of the reporters who are dialed into the Philadelphia Eagles, they like Gabe Hall. I think Gabe Hall's going to end up with a roster spot. I don't think he's going to be on the practice squad again. And then, of course, they protected Byron Young through the back end of last season. He's a little banged up right now, I think, in training camp, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think was there today. Yeah, he always seems to be banged up. But they protected him. They had him on the roster and just made him an inactive for the last, 3-4 weeks of the season. So there's clearly something that they think they have in maybe Byron Young, and they have him there. Outside of that, I mean, there's no like the other guys that they brought in, Evans and Sykes and stuff. I mean, they're just going to probably be bodies, training camp bodies turned into practice squad bodies by the time the season starts. But there was just no way Thomas Booker, I think he was in the pecking order. He probably was like the sixth priority. And I don't think he wanted to be that. I think that he knows that he did some good things the last year at camp, undeniably. We didn't have him on at way too early 53-man roster predictions last year. And then he ended up having a really great preseason, and he showed out, and he ended up finding his way onto the roster. But I mean, I think you go to the right spot with an opportunity and you give him more opportunity. Maybe he does do a few more things. There just wasn't enough room for him on the roster, but it was nothing against him. He just probably wanted a new home for more of an opportunity than he was going to get in Philadelphia.
Well, I don't
As
think
for
he requested the trade, but
no,
also
no,
the Raiders also don't release Christian Wilkins, so they had need some bodies at the defensive tackle position. And right, I mean, we know that what Jalen Carter is going to be. Jordan Davis came into camp in phenomenal shape. They expect it, like you said, expect him to play more. Ty Robinson, they drafted Moro Jomo, according to Landon Dickerson, having an outstanding camp. It's the Dickerson and Jurgens both said that. And like you mentioned, Gabe Hall, a lot of good things are being said about him. I think that they're the five. I think that if the roster were to be made right now, that is who they would keep. Yeah, I mean, I think this has more to say about Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson than it does about Thomas Booker than anything.
Yep.
Um,
That was what my next comment was going to be.
I still like Asante Samuel Jr.'s out there. He's a free agent. I know he's coming off of an injury. I'm shocked that they didn't, bring him in for something. But I know that Bennett is on a rookie contract, 2 years left, 24, young, runs a 4.3. So like he's got the speed. And even with his size, he's not a nickel. He plays primarily on the outside too. So that gives them, like I said, gives them another body to compete for that CB2 position.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it says a lot more. Like we heard Vic Fangio kind of speak out about Adoree Jackson, and like you said earlier in the episode, Vic Fangio doesn't mince words, and it doesn't sound like Jackson's a runaway. When I'm going back through training camp notes over the past week or so, he is getting the first reps, which might also speak to Keely Ringo as well. The fact that Jackson has kind of been talked the way that Fangio has talked about him, and he's getting the first team reps. And then Ringo, I mean, both of them have flashed a bit. Like they have some pass breakups and stuff in there. So there's some highlights there, but there must be something that Vic Fangio is not seeing or not liking that he's seeing, especially if he wants to move Cooper DeJean out into safety or be more of a versatile move piece. It means like you can kind of see there's a trend towards Mac McWilliams in the slot, Kenyon Mitchell following that top guy, and then somebody else has to be the CB2, and they have to be able to trust him to hold it down when they want to move Cooper DeJean around and use his versatility to the defense's advantage. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think we're going to see a ton of Ringo, a ton of Jackson, and maybe not this week, but I think the last two preseason games are probably going to see a lot of Bennett, because I think that after this week, they're going to crank it up for Bennett. They're going to say he's studying that playbook right now. And come, the next practice after the preseason game, they're going to have him going right at it. I think they're going to really give him a run next week, especially with the two joint practices. And they're going to really want to get the most that they can out of those three and figure out who they keep and who's going to stay. Because I feel like at the end of the day, Eli Ricks is a fairly good special teamer. I think they like
So is
him.
Keely.
So is Keely. They have, they have Q Lock, they have Mac McWilliams, Cooper DeJean. I really don't see these three guys making it, Ringo, Jackson, and Bennett. But I feel like the guy most likely not to make it at this point, in my opinion, would be Adoree Jackson. I feel like they traded for Bennett, and I feel like Bennett may end up making the roster. Doesn't have a load of special teams experience, but Ricks and Ringo are big special teams guys. And if they see enough if they see Ringo and Jackson as even or very competitively even, they're going to go with who's going to bring the additional value outside of the defense. And I feel like that would be a Ringo type player, not a Dendori Jackson type player. It was an interesting trade, how he always likes to make that move seemingly for a DB in August. And I mean, Thomas Booker was not going to be end up playing very many snaps for you, whereas a guy like Bennett can really bring out the best competition for the CB2 spot. But I mean, that CB2, I said safety was one good. Safety two was going to be one of the funnest position battles to watch. I think CB2 just became the one I'm watching the closest and most excited to watch this preseason.
Yeah, I mean, half the secondary is still quote unquote unaccounted for. Like we mentioned, we know Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, and Quinyon Mitchell are going to be out there. Who's the other starting safety? Like if you look at the Eagles depth chart right now, the cornerback two has Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo. The second safety has Sidney Brown and Andrew Makuba. Makuba won't play this week. He's been banged up, hasn't really been practicing. Um, we don't. I'm still like skeptical about Sidney Brown because like last year, I know he was coming off of injury from the year before, but last year when they needed somebody to replace, either Blankenship or Gardner Johnson, they went with Tristan McCullum. Like that I don't know if that says anything about Sidney Brown or whatnot. And that's why, like it wouldn't shock me if this week in this game, because you're going to see a lot of Sidney Brown, Tristan McCollum, Andre Sam, if Reed won't play. And again, I think Cooper's the interesting one because they might want to see him get game reps at safety, but I wouldn't put him out there. And if they put him out there, it would probably be for a series, if that. But like if the backup safeties don't play well, I'm still on the Justin Simmons band. Like I still think Justin Simmons could get a call. They want to see what these guys can do in game action. And again, it's preseason, so it's not as fast. So this week the Bengals are going to play some of their starters. Joe Burrow is going to be out there. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins could be out there. There are some good offensive weapons on that Cincinnati Bengals team that could definitely allow these, Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo and then Sidney Brown, Andre, like allow these guys to kind of be put in positions. How are you going to react when you're going up against the best of the best? When you're going up against Chase and Higgins, you're going to have to show out. And I'm hoping that they do. But again, Justin Simmons knows the system, knows, Christian Parker, knows Vic Fangio. So like he can be on speed dial for Howie Roseman, or Howie has 13 draft picks to play with next year. There'll be a safety that's unhappy. When they made the CJ trade, 4 years ago? I think it was 4 years ago. Nobody, when it happened, we were all in shock. We were like, wait, what? That can happen again. You never know. I'm definitely going to be intrigued this week and how these guys that are in these battles, and you mentioned the two big ones, the safety and the CB2 position, how they're going to perform, and is anybody going to separate themselves from their, from the competition?
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, the Eagles do prioritize, those trenches a lot more. So I find it really hard to believe, especially like you look even at the linebacker position. I have a hard time believing that you're going to see more than four safeties or more than like five CBs, maybe six. They might be able to justify six because Cooper DeJean's going to play both. But if they justify six CBs, I don't see a way they justify more than three safeties. So I like when you look at how the roster breaks down, I think some people have kind of mapped out the locks, and it's like pretty much 43 to 45 locked in players. And then the other position, the other 10 openings, say about half of them are pretty much called for and locked. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of wiggle room. And I know, like, I guess for Tristan McCullum, the good thing is he clearly is doing everything that Vic Fangio wants him to do because he speaks his praises and clearly loves Tristan McCullum. But I mean, going through like looking at, when people are talking and reacting to training camp, like some of the reporters, I'm not seeing McCullum's name. I'm not seeing Sam's name. Lewis Seen has missed the last couple practices. He's been banged up. I wasn't really seeing his name out there either, which makes me wonder. This is training camp, and if their names aren't coming up as making plays or popping out to reporters or anything, they really need some big preseasons and they really got to show that they can stand out. But it's just when you just look at the makeup, like linebackers, I've seen Smelmonden's name. I've seen Jeremiah Trotter's name. I've seen tons of Jihad Campbell. I've seen all of those guys. I see a world where they're keeping 5 or 6 linebackers because they got something going with some of these linebackers. And Nakobe Dean's obviously going to start on the pup list. So it's just the more you look at the roster and the more you start to math it out, these battles are going to be vitally important throughout the preseason. And I really can't wait to watch them.
Yeah, excuse me. Um, yeah, and speaking of the linebackers, I mean, it's been brought up this group of linebackers that the Eagles have. Remember, we were like trying to figure out when, like, Nigel Bradham was one of the better linebackers that the Eagles had in the last decade or so. I mean, Zach Bond, Jihad Campbell, Nakobe Dean, even though he's hurt right now, they have a lot of potential if they can stay healthy. And I'm not counting, the edge, the quote unquote edge rushers that are listed as outside linebackers. I think that's a bogus. That's a different position, but it is what it is. But yeah, so I am so looking forward to seeing Zach Bond and Jihad Campbell play together. Like, I feel like they're the same type of player. So you can blitz one, you can have one drop, you can blitz one, have the other drop in coverage, or vice versa. And like, it's so many different things that Vic Fangio is going to be able to do with this defense because of the personnel they have at the linebacker position, and obviously with Jalen Carter, who, I mean, come on now, like, Jalen Carter has the potential to become the best a top 3 defensive player potentially in all of the NFL within the next year or two. That's the potential that he has, and the better he gets, the better he makes the players around him. The better he's going to make Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt and Jordan Davis and Maro Jomo, and that's only going to help the linebackers, and hopefully that helps the secondary, because if you can get penetration, if you can get to the quarterback quickly, that means the corners and aren't covering longer. So maybe it wouldn't matter who we have at CB2. I'm not saying it's obviously going to matter, but if you can get to the quarterback quickly, they won't have to cover as long. It doesn't allow the receivers to get open as quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've ran with that mentality before that if these edge rushers can get home, if these defensive tackles can get home, maybe we don't have to stress the position. But I mean, we've also seen moments where the Philadelphia Eagles where they leave just that small opening, that small pocket where quick passing, quick reacting quarterbacks get the ball out quick and they eat us alive. So I'm hoping, I mean, I know that hasn't happened like maybe a couple years ago when we had that bad 10-week stretch. Probably saw that happening a little bit, but last year we didn't really see that happening. So hopefully, we don't have to worry about some of these positions, and hopefully we can trust that Ojomo and Carter and Davis are going to take their games to even another level. And even Zach Bond and Jalen Hunt, Nolan Smith, some of these guys are still developing. Like, we saw such great flashes throughout, the end of last season. But we do have to remember that at that moment, Nolan Smith was not necessarily, he became a starter as the season went on, but he wasn't necessarily seeing, that 75%, 80% of snaps. Same with Jalen Hunt. What happens when they're out there for more snaps and they're forced to be there and they're forced to play, show their motor and run their motor longer? It's going to be interesting to see how things go with them and how they continue to develop when thrown into a much larger role. Probably Nolan Smith is probably about time he's dropped into that larger role. But Jalen Hunt was drafted as a developmental guy, and in year 2, he's going to be pushed into a starting job right away because obviously Uche and Ojolari are not taking that starting job. Those two edges are locked in. It's just how much can they handle and how much are they going to play. But it's going to be really interesting because I do think, every year Jordan Davis comes to training camp, better cardio, lost weight, looking in the best shape of his life. Same old song and dance with him. Is it
Well,
actually
he looks
going to
way
change?
better this year than he's looked
Of
since
course,
he's gotten here.
eventually, when you've gone from what was he 300 and whatever he came into the league at 350, 360, and now he's at like what I think 320, 310 ish. Like when you eventually he's gonna look like this amazing, completely different person after this focus over the last 3 off seasons like he's had. But I mean, you can have that focus and you can be in better shape, but is it going to translate on the field? And I hope that it does because I want to see it translate for Jordan Davis so badly, especially in a contract year. There's nothing more that I want to see than Jordan Davis to get that contract because I think he deserves it. I think he's a really good player in Philadelphia. I think he's a little underrated just because people want him to be like Jalen Carter. They want him to be a guy who wreaks havoc in the backfield on almost every play. But that's just not the type of player that Jordan Davis is. Would I like to see it more often than it happens now? Absolutely. But we do have to remember that's just not the player that Jordan Davis is as well.
Well, I think that they gave him, a mandate this summer because they want him to become a better player. I'm not asking him to go out there and get 10 sacks, 5 sacks. Like that's not his game. If he gets up to 5 sacks, that's a bonus. But if he can play, 50, 60, 70, 65% of the snaps, I think that's a win. They picked up his 5th year option for a reason. They believe in him. And he helps make the defense better. And I think that we're going to see that improvement. I mean, he's not going to like. I don't anticipate any of the kind of pretty much definite starters to play in any of these preseason games because that's how Nick Sirianni rolls. But I mean, if they get a couple of plays on Thursday or over the next couple of weeks, so be it. But we'll see. And I expect big things from Jordan Davis this year. I think that he's going to have a really good year. Before we jump into the game preview, I'm going to jump over to the offensive side of the ball. I mean, right now we're kind of hurt with the injury bug at receiver. AJ Brown has a hamstring injury. Devontae Smith came back, but he was battling a back injury. But Saquon apparently looks really good out there. AJ Dillon, I really want to see the AJ Dillon and Saquon Barkley in the backfield together. I just think it would be really funny seeing those two quadzillas back there. Jalen has had, I guess, an up and down camp. There have been days where the offense hasn't looked good. There's been days where the offense has looked really good. The only battle is right guard, and it might not even be that big of a battle. It came in as, and again, it was the same thing last year, but it came in as Tyler Steen's job to lose, and he lost it last year because of injury. If he can stay healthy, we'll see what happens. And I think, he's probably the weak spot on the offense if we're being thinking about it. But I don't anticipate any of the offensive starters playing. It wouldn't shock me if maybe they put Steen out there just to get them into some game flow, game action, just to have it on tape so they can see it, review it, going forward. But again, they do have the joint practice with the Cleveland Browns next week, and during preseason they prioritize those sometimes more than they prioritize these preseason games.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely do because they don't want to put their guys in positions where they might risk a major injury. During those preseason games, although you're not going up against another team's starters all the time, you might be going up against guys, the second and third stringers, guys who really, really want a job, who also aren't as technically sound from an NFL standpoint. And just like one of those hip drop tackles, one of those freak accidents hit him high, concuss a guy, like some of those situations, roll up on the ankle, roll up on something. Those situations are just 9 times out of 10 freak accidents, and that's why they try to keep them off the field. Whereas in these joint practices, you do get that one-on-one time with the first offense of the other team, first defense of the other team. The more technically sound players, the ones that you can trust, aren't out there, hopefully not out there trying to hurt anybody or make any major mistakes. And maybe aren't necessarily giving it 100%. So I agree with you. They definitely prioritize it, and they prioritize it for a reason, and it makes perfect sense too, because you're seeing the offense versus first defense on both sides of the coin. So it makes so much more sense to do it that way and to see what your guys got against the number ones of other teams. Of course, Cleveland Browns, that'll be an interesting one because I think they added like a 7th quarterback to their roster today. So it really should be interesting to see what's going on there in Cleveland. But yeah, from an offensive standpoint, Jalen Hurts, it doesn't feel like ESP's, days or pass attempts without a interception made it as far as it did last season when he was tracking those and set the record for ESP's magical tracker that he has. But otherwise, yeah, like there's really like you said, Tyler Steen could arguably be the weak point. But I mean, he it was his job to lose last preseason, and he ended up getting injured. And then throughout the season, he looked pretty good when he had to step in when another injury happened at the right guard position, but then obviously it went right back to this right back who was supposed to belong to originally. So it's difficult to say like would be is it gonna would it be nice to see Steen on Thursday night and see what he's got, maybe, but I don't know if I'd want to risk that injury. I mean, I don't necessarily believe based on training camp reporting that there's anybody in the depth of the offensive line that is even remotely close to pushing him for the job, because I've almost never seen the backup offensive lineman mentioned at all, except on occasion. I think I saw Holland Pierce's name come up a couple times in a couple practices, which will be intriguing.
I do think Matt Pryor, if given the opportunity, he could potentially push him. He has starting experience. He's played a lot, or I don't want to say a lot, but he has played. So that he would be interesting. Like if see how he plays on Thursday night against the Bengals. If when he gets out there.
Definitely. I think it's just like reporters focus on the names people are going to want to hear about. And then if another name just happens to come into the fold or the frame, they mention it, like Holland Pierce or like some of these deeper backups. So I feel like seeing them on Thursday is going to be really nice because they're names that we haven't been hearing and we haven't been seeing because they haven't been the focus of attention from reporters. So I'll be really interested to see some of these backup offensive linemen because I think that they do have some pretty impressive talent there. So it'll be interesting to see once they're actually on the football field in game action what they're actually going to do. Wide receiver is interesting to me. Wide receiver, mostly for the fact that Johnny Wilson hasn't had a good camp. Anaya Smith seems to be having a better camp than last year, but he was also hurt because they ended up putting him on the pup list to start the season. So I don't know, like Elijah Cooks has stood out. Terrace Marshall was standing out at the start. Then he missed a couple practices and kind of doesn't seem like he's come back or bounced back to have getting the same reaction from reporters. So it'll be really interesting, I think, to see what they do at like the wide receiver 4 and 5, because Jahan Dotson, they've been raving about the connection Hurts has with Dotson, and it feels like Dotson's really getting comfortable in this offense. So I don't think that there's any doubt that the top 3 are there and they're locked into their roles. It's going to be what do you do at 4 and 5? Because I just don't see a world where they keep 6 wide receivers. They're not the wide receivers they have aren't that deep. Like I feel like an Elijah Cooks, a Terrace Marshall, some of those guys, unless they really do something big during the preseason, will make it back to us and we can put them on the practice squad. And when we need them, if we need them, we bring them up for game days. I just don't see a world where you're going to see 6 kept. So it'll be interesting to see from the people who have actually had their names called, like Wilson, Marshall, Smith, Cooks, where they use and how they use Avery Williams. It'll be interesting to see how they all duke it out and who actually makes a roster of that. Of course, it's up for debate. Is Avery Williams an RB or a wide receiver? How are they going to classify? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. He's a return guy. He's a return specialist. And I would be quite confident in saying.
For what it's worth, in their depth chart for this week, they have Avery Williams as a receiver. I do think that a sneaky, like under the radar position is receiver though, because I mean the Eagles have been fortunate for the last 3 or 4 years that AJ Brown and Devontae haven't missed a lot of time. Now, I mean they were both out against Tampa last week and we saw how that went, or last year and we saw how that went. But for the most part, they both play majority of the season. It's a sneaky, under the radar position of need, just because if something were to happen to either of them long term, and obviously they're both superstar receivers, so you say this about any superstar player, like there's a big drop off. Jahan Dotson, obviously a first round pick, he's there. But beyond that, like you mentioned, Terrace Marshall, Elijah Cooks, Darius, like there's a bunch of names, but we don't know like if they're going to be any good. So it wouldn't shock me if Howie's just keeping an eye out, like as we get to, when we get towards cut down day, if he's able to upgrade the wide receiver position, just to be safe. You want to safeguard. You want to make sure that you have the proper backups if something happens to AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. Knock on wood, cross fingers. Obviously, we don't think anything is going to happen, but it's the NFL. Anything can obviously happen.
And then the only other position I was really watching was tight end, because for the number of tight ends that they presently have on roster, heard Goddard called a lot. He's doing really good. Obviously, the concern with Dallas Goddard is how many games is he going to miss and how many is he going to play. And then you had Grant Calcaterra making plays, whatever. But we saw Grant Calcaterra is not a good blocker. He is not someone that can cover for Dallas Goddard in a 100% of snap scenario if Goddard's out. And then Kylan Granson, you've seen his name pop up here and there. But otherwise, for the fact that we have, I think, I want to say six, seven tight ends on roster right now, for the fact that we really haven't heard from any of them making any types of plays or stepping up in any types of situations is really kind of concerning, because I already saw backup tight end or tight end two or three as a need for the Eagles, because we know Goddard's probably going to miss some time. We know at the end of this year, Goddard may not come back. We saw that it took a bit
We
to
know
get the
Goddard and
negotiation where
Calcaterra are
it
the
did.
two. Yeah, Goddard and Calcaterra are the two locks at tight end position. I was shocked that they didn't, when he got released, that they didn't at least bring Noah Fant, excuse me. Call him up, bring him in. He ended up signing with Cincinnati. I think that he would have been a nice, insurance policy at the tight end position.
Yeah, I think that we could do more. I just think he did like how he doesn't want to bring in anyone that's going to ruffle feathers with Dallas Goddard, because they probably want to have Dallas Goddard back if they can get him on a respectable contract and if he's able to prove he can stay healthy this season. But I mean, I think that injuries are always going to be a question mark for Dallas Goddard, and the fact that they have done very little to address the backup tight end position concerns me more, knowing how bad Grant Calcaterra is as a blocker, because we got to see it more firsthand last year than we ever got to see it before. And it was worrisome. It was troublesome, to say the least. So it'll be interesting to see how some of these tight ends step up in the preseason. And a lot of them are clearly going to get that roll of the dice, because there are six or seven of them presently on roster. So you're bound to see some of them get a handful of snaps and see what they can do. But I mean, the two locks are for sure. And I mean, to be completely honest, at this rate, I don't see them keeping three tight ends. I see them moving a couple to the practice squad once the preseason rolls out. And when they need one, or if they think they'll need one because of injury, they'll bring them up when they need them.
That'll be another position to watch out, at cut down day, to see if anybody, or potential trade if Kyle Pitts gets moved, somebody like that. I don't think it would happen, obviously, but you never know. Again, 13 draft picks next year, how he can do whatever, do with what he pleases, as long as it doesn't affect his ability to, give Jalen Carter that big, ginormous contract that he's going to get next year. All right, so we are less than 49 hours away from the Eagles and the Cincinnati Bengals kicking off their preseason at Lincoln Financial Field on Thursday night. We've talked about, kind of what we're looking for. I think the big battles that we're looking for are the CB2 and safety. And, we'll see a lot of Adoree Jackson. We'll see a lot of Keely Ringo. And if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins play, it's going to be a great battle. We'll see who, which one, if one or the other or both, if they're able to, to make some plays. Now, obviously, we know that the Eagles are going to be very vanilla, especially offensively with Kevin Petula calling plays. Cannot stress enough that it is just preseason, so let's not get too crazy. When Tanner McKee or that, it wouldn't shock me if they started DTR. Like, it wouldn't shock me if Tanner McKee doesn't play. They start DTR or Kyle McCord, who's handing off the ball. Who's handing it off to let's see, Montrell Johnson Jr. or Shaderick Powell, and throwing the ball to Cameron Letu and Darius Cooper, and Ife Adey. Did I say that right? I don't know if I said his name right. We're not going to see any of the starters for the Eagles, so it is going to be nice to see Eagles green, the Eagles logo. Well, they don't put it on the midfield, but to see them white jerseys, because that's what they wear in preseason, with the green helmet, back at Lincoln Financial Field, playing in a football game against a different team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like we talked about it right before we came on, somebody's going to drop a report tomorrow that they heard a rumor that there might be a chance that the starters play. And I think this
Yeah.
happened a couple times last year during the preseason, and they never step foot on that field. And that is 100% the correct decision to make, is to not put your key players at risk. Does it make the first couple weeks of the football season extremely excruciating to watch as they get things into a groove? Absolutely. But you know that it is better to see a rough couple weeks from Jalen Hurts and the offense, or Kenyon Mitchell in the defense, rather than Kenyon Mitchell or Jalen Hurts going down with an injury that costs him the entire season. So at the end of the day, the right decision is not to put them out there. I think we'll probably see Tanner McKee out there for a handful of plays, but I agree with you. I mean, speak of DTR, that's another name that I've heard very little said about. Kyle McCord started taking snaps with the third string offense.
I think different. I started hearing the last couple of days that TTR has been really good, throwing the ball
Oh,
really well.
okay, then
So
I haven't read the same ones as you, I guess, because I know McCord took over like the first half of camp as the QB3, and they seemed they were letting him run with it, but maybe DTR is starting to get a little bit more comfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, they're the emergency third quarterback. You hope you don't need to see them, but having one of them take the step that McKee took. And now that McKee is moving into the QB2 from the emergency QB3 role, you always like to think that we can be a QB factory and continue to turn our backup quarterback into some sort of draft capital or something we can invest in our team for the future. So we'll see how things go. I'll be interested to see those guys on the field. Like you said, I agree with you. The cornerback CB2, you're definitely going to see those guys out there. Safeties, I think I struggle with safety because I Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship, and Andrew Makuba are locks for the roster. How much do the Eagles care to put Makuba out there and Brown to duke it out to be the safety too and put their health at risk? Makuba's not playing this week, no doubt in my mind he isn't. But I don't think we see him in the preseason at all. They drafted him in the
I do.
second round.
Oh, we will. We'll see
You
him
think
next
so?
week if he's back to practice. You'll
Okay,
see
yeah.
both
Well,
Sidney Brown
I,
out there, especially because it's Vic. Vic Fangio is going to want to see them out there and make sure he can run the system. And I think it's important because, as I mentioned earlier, if they can't play, Justin Simmons is a phone call away.
I agree.
So
And I
you
hope
will
so.
see Andrew Makuba. You will see Cindy Brown's going to play this week. Makuba will play next week most likely. But yeah, you'll definitely see them out there in preseason.
I hope so. I mean, they've done a lot of splitting of the snaps throughout the training camp. Maybe I'm just super pessimistic based on past experience with this Philadelphia Eagles, and the mentality and the culture that they built of keeping this players as safe as possible, who they know are the locks to make the roster. So I don't. I mean, hopefully Makuba gets healthy and he does get to see the field for even just a couple of series, just to get some confidence. I don't know. Nothing to me really has indicated from reporters that they've decided who's going to start across from Reed Blankenship. But I do think Cooper DeJean, no matter what, is probably going to take a bite out of some of that playing time either way. But me and you've both spoken about Sidney Brown. We both find that Sidney Brown and Reed Blankenship are very similar players, and you don't want to have two very similar players on the field because that could end up leading to missed plays blowing up, missed tackles. We've seen it before with like a guy like Reed Blankenship. And one of the reasons why we're a little more skeptical of paying Reed Blankenship this big amount of money, where others are so open to saying he is a like star safety. So it'll be interesting to see how they work that out. But I haven't really seen any indicator that it's going to be Makuba or Brown for sure as a safety too, and then that
I think
cornerback battle.
if the Eagles had their druthers, they want it to be Makuba.
I think I
But
would
he's
agree.
got to get healthy.
Yeah, and
He's got
you
to get
don't
back onto
draft
the
a
field.
guy. Unfortunately for Sidney Brown, you don't draft a guy in this first or second round and don't expect them to start at some point in year one. I would anticipate that the goal is Sidney Brown, if he does win the job, won't have it all year. I don't expect that to happen. I just find Makuba's too good of a player to keep off the football field. You need to put him on that football field, and he needs to he needs to be out there. I like Sidney Brown. I think he's a great depth player, and I think that him playing 25-30% of the snaps when needed throughout the year is perfectly sufficient for me to see from him. But Makuba is a higher IQ football player. He's a ball hawk. He's the type of guy we want to see out there on the football field. And then other guys, like I'm just like I hope to see guys like Ty Robinson, and you're going to see Gabe Hall. Like I'd like to see Jihad Cable. I hope we see him. Joshua Uche, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. apparently has been having a really good camp. Smail
Small
Mondin,
London.
like
I'm looking forward to seeing.
all the linebackers seem to be having a really good camp. Every time you look, somebody's talking about one of the linebackers making a play, whether it be in coverage or blowing up a run or something. So it'll be really. I'm more interested to watch the defense and the offense because, like we said, how much do we care about the RB3 or the RB4 or the wide receiver 4 or the wide receiver 5? The guys are going to see the field 10-15% of snaps all together next year. Like, I mean, I'd be intrigued to see AJ Dillon out there. I don't know if they'd risk it, but if he's secured a spot, maybe they won't risk it. But I'd like to see AJ Dillon out there because I think he missed the entire season last year. So I don't think he hasn't gotten a chance to see genuine, true football action in probably going on close to 2 years now. So it would be nice to see AJ Dillon out there and see what he's got and see if he's going to be worth keeping on the roster. Um, but offensively, it's just so man, because unless there's an injury, which you don't want, because none of these guys backing any of these players up is anywhere remotely close to the level of player that the player injured would be. You don't really want to see it and you don't really want to think about it. But defensively, we had so much turnover on the defensive side of the ball that some of these guys who are going to be playing on Thursday night are going to be on the roster come week one and are going to play meaningful snaps for this Philadelphia Eagles defense this season.
I'm still. It's like when they traded CJGJ, and a lot of people were upset or mad about that, and I was too because I don't know if there was really a plan to like, and I still don't know if there's a plan. Obviously, the plan I guess would be Makuba, but can like he hasn't. We haven't seen him in the NFL game. He's hurt. He's not going to play this week. So will he be able to stay on the field? So I'm hoping that they have that figured out because that safety position is very important, obviously. Unless that, the answer is going to be Cooper DeJean. I prefer Cooper DeJean to play in the slot, and the reason being, I want him near that line of scrimmage. He's such a short tackler. He's quick. Like we saw the play against Cincinnati last year in Cincinnati on that fourth down play for the Bengals when he was following Jamar Chase, back and forth, and he made the tackle behind the line of scrimmage to thwart a first down attempt. Like, so I don't want DeJean playing safety only because I don't want him playing away from the line of scrimmage, if that makes sense. I want him in the action because he's very versatile. He's smart. He's instinctual. He can tackle well. So I think hopefully, they figure that safety position out, and it's not like obviously he can play it sometimes, but I don't want that to be his full-time position for Cooper DeJean.
Agreed, and I don't want to see situations where Reed Blankenship is left single high as a safety either. Like if you've Cooper DeJean out there, but it's kind of more of a ploy, and then you move him closer to the line of scrimmage. I don't need to see Reed Blankenship back there all by himself exclusively, because that just to me screams danger. You might be able to get away with it a couple times, but I think it would cost you a couple times just as much. Not to the same degree as a CJGJ, because you see some of the videos that came out of his coverage and his blown coverage and his misses in coverage, but to a certain degree, I don't find Reed Blankenship the best cover safety, nor do I think he's improved in that aptitude of his game. And that's why you bring in a ball hawk like Andrew Makuba to help with that. Like a high IQ ball hawk like Andrew Makuba kind of covers some of the gaps in Reed Blankenship's games that some people may admittedly not want to talk about too loudly. So I mean, I agree with you. I think they need to figure out the safety position. I don't know. Like, I think Makuba will be an answer long term, but will Makuba be able to be comfortable and integrated like Cooper DeJean was so quickly and be able to take over such a significant amount of snaps right away for this defense? It'll be interesting to see. Um,
I do think I know you just said like quickly for the Gene. I do think that injury, like because he didn't get into the starting lineup until week 5 after the bye, week 6 against Cleveland. I think that actually helped him. Now I'm not saying Makuba should sit out the first 4 weeks, obviously, um, but maybe not getting thrown into the fire right away, especially in a defense that can be as complex as Vic Fangio's, could be a positive for somebody like Makuba.
and I agree with you in that point. Like the NFL is such a tough sport. Like if you're drafted in round one, round two, and at some points, certain portions of round three, they expect you to be ready to go out year one. There is such little time to truly develop. And in, like you said, in such a complex defense like Vic Fangio's, it's hard to be tossed straight into the fire. And I agree with you. Would it be nice if Sidney Brown could hold things down for a couple weeks and Makuba can really see the defense in action and really could become more comfortable? Because there's no way, no matter how smart a guy is like Andrew Makuba, that you're going to tell me he is 100% comfortable and ready to go with this defense week one. I just would not be able to believe that that's possible for most people in most defensive players in their first season in the NFL. So, I mean, would it be nice? Maybe. Can the Eagles afford to do it? I doubt it. Could there still be a move in how he's back pocket that LJ is aching to see happen, especially in this secondary? I mean, I will never rule it out. I think Asante Samuel Jr. is waiting for something to happen in preseason. Somebody's gonna get hurt, and his agent's gonna be able to pick up the phone, and he's gonna be able to get paid the top dollar. Right now, he wouldn't get a top dollar. He wouldn't get probably what he thinks he's worth, even though coming off the injury, he probably knows he's not worth what he thinks he's worth. But an injury suddenly to your CB1 or your CB2 makes Asante Samuel Jr. look a lot more valuable and someone who you definitely need to sign. He's playing the long game because he knows something's bound to happen that's going to lock him into a bit of
And
money.
he's also coming off of an injury,
And he
so
is coming off of an injury too. It's just weird because I haven't seen much out there that he's been visiting with teams. And I know like when he got cleared, like mid July, late July, he was supposed to start. Like I think it was more mid July that he had that appointment with his doctor, that he was going to start looking around and getting his agent to pick up the phone. So it's a little interesting that we haven't seen a whole lot of out of that. But I mean, we'll see if Howie's got another move up his sleeve. But right now, this is going to be a big
he
game.
does.
I think this is
I
going
mean,
to,
I think the
I
last
think
couple
so
of
too.
years he's made a move in after the first or second preseason game to bring somebody in. He did CJ last year was Jahan Dotson. 3 years ago was CJGJ. So
Yeah,
they'll
he's going to
do.
want to see these, this second team offense, third team offense, fourth team in some regards, offense and defense. And if he doesn't like what he sees at a certain position that might be light, like say the safety position or the cornerback position, he should absolutely make a move. This is a team that this window is wide open. They got the perfect mix of youth, mostly youth because there's not a whole lot of veterans, but there's a couple older guys there. But he's got such a perfect mix of players right now that the window is still wide open, especially with this offense where he's got some of these key players under contract through to like, I think for the majority 2027. He's got some of these key guys locked up. So on the offensive side of the ball, but then things might get a bit more sticky there because then they're all going to be
They,
heading towards the wrong side of 30 pretty
the
quickly.
Eagles
So
are the youngest team, or second or third youngest team in all of the NFL, and they're the quote unquote cheapest defense in the NFL. They spent the least amount of money on their defense. So
but
the
it's
fact that
about
they
to
were number one
become
overall last
way
year,
more
and they
expensive.
have 13 draft picks next year. So this young team could get even younger, and the window could continue to stay open. Let's be degenerate. What's your prediction on the game Thursday night?
Let's be degenerate. Oh boy.
It's a
Well,
preseason game where the Eagles are going to play no starters, and the Bengals are probably going to play their starters for half quarter or quarter. Who knows?
yeah, I mean, I like the Eagles second and third stringers more than the Cincinnati Bengals. So there's a part of me that feels like but like they said that they're going to play multiple series. So like if you put the starters out there against our second and third, we're going to end up way behind the eight ball, like super quick, and we're never going to come out of it. And that's what I think is going to happen. Like I think that we're going to lose to the Bengals, but it's not for a lack of trying. It's just going to be because they're going to put their starters out there. They're going to risk their starters for multiple series. They're because they want to, and that's how they play. And I mean, a score, if you really want to score prediction, I feel like it's probably going to end up being like 31 to like 21. I just don't like if you see DTR and Kamal Cord being out there for a lot, like I don't know if those guys are going to be very good at putting points on the board with the pieces at their disposal.
Hey, I had to get that in there. We haven't done one since what in 6 months
Super
since the
Bowl,
Super
yeah.
Bowl, so I had to get it in there. Bengals will probably win, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. We're like I said, we're 30 days away from the real thing on September 4th against those hated Dallas Cowboys. Thank you everybody for tuning into our training camp preview or review so far and our preseason game number 1 preview. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LGHeroic54. Follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. Like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts on the show. We are so close to game time. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.